It's interesting, some of those movies you watch as a kid and then later realize the significance it had on a hobby as an adult. And as I started collecting animation cells, I didn't really understand the significance Roger Rabbit had to that style of animation and how it really revitalized an industry when it came to animation like that. I had a chance to talk to the creator of the character Roger Rabbit, and his name is Gary Wolf. He's a very creative guy. He wrote the novel and has wrote other novels since then. But the movie was based off of his characters, and just recently he got the rights to his characters back from Disney. So what does that mean for the future of Roger Rabbit? We talked to Gary now. Thank you for watching. How exciting is it that you have the rights back to Roger Rabbit after all these years? Like, I think fans online were just celebrating. They said, "Finally, someone that cares about this is actually gonna be in control of it." They're like, "This is finally all everything we've ever wanted could happen now." Like, the possibilities are endless. Like,
Yeah,
people are thrilled.
I am thrilled myself, and I hope I can fulfill everybody's expectations. You know?
How hard was that to get it back? Because decades you were trying, it seems like.
Yeah, it was actually ridiculously simple. The hardest part was in the initial stages when what happened was I wrote a 12 episode TV series set in Toontown. No Roger Rabbit characters because Disney owns those, so it was all new characters. It was called Harry Wolf. Harry Wolf is a detective who was operating in a jazz club in Toontown. Did a 12 episode TV series, and my producer got interest from Amazon, HBO, Netflix. They all had one question: does he have the right to use the word and the place Toontown?
Hmm.
And my producer asked me, I have no idea. So I asked my attorney. My attorney said, I don't know. I don't deal in that kind of stuff. So we went to an intellectual rights attorney, young woman, and asked her, do I have the rights to use Toontown? And that question never did get resolved.
Hmm.
Instead, she came back and said, I read your contract. And you qualify under the 35-year law to get the rights back to Roger Rabbit. I had no idea what she was talking about,
Wow.
none. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And she explained that in the 1990s, I believe, the songwriters lobby, which apparently is very powerful in Washington, lobbied Congress because songwriters had been writing songs in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They had sold them to music publishing companies. The music publishing companies made a ton of money on their songs, and the songwriters got nothing.
Mm.
So the songwriters lobbied Congress to pass a law saying that after 35 years, the songwriters could petition the Library of Congress and get their rights back. And this law passed. And there was a either a loophole or a specification in it. I never knew which, but something in that law made it also apply to writers and their books.
Mm.
So my attorney, this young attorney, said you are eligible to get the rights back to Roger Rabbit from Disney after 35 years. And I said, get out of town. There's no way that could happen. I mean, Disney is never going to give up the rights to Roger Rabbit. It's just they don't have a choice. It's a law. They have to do it. So I hired a firm that specialized in rights reversion under the 35-year law, and it is not hard, but it is extremely complicated, and
Mm.
you have to be extremely finicky about when you do what. First of all, you have to specify a date, 35 years to the day when those rights expire.
Mhm.
If you specify a day early or a day late, tough luck. The deadline's going to come and go, and you've lost it. And you're going to have to wait another 35 years.
Oh.
The date has to be a specific date, exactly 35 years after you sold the rights to the company. You also have to notify them exactly 2 years before those rights expire to
Mhm.
give them time to prepare for losing your property. And so the attorney, the law firm that I hired to do this, gave me a date. It was June 12th, actually almost 2 years ago now. It's June 12th. And so, uh, as I say, if you're a day late or a day early, Disney's not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And it's just going to come and go and you're going to lose it. So I hired another law firm, second law firm. And they also specialized in reversion of rights. I had them do the same exercise.
Mhm.
I gave them the same information. Didn't tell them that I already had another firm do this. They did the same computation and came up with the same date.
Okay, good. Makes you feel better.
Felt fairly confident. My attorney, my rights reversion attorney, notified Disney 2 years before the date was going to come and say that I was going to take my rights back. And I expected a firestorm. I
Mhm.
expected lots of lawsuits. I expected, the evil letters from Disney corporate. I expected that this was going to be a volcanic eruption, but it wasn't.
Mm.
Actually, nothing happened. Disney accepted it. It's a law. They had to accept it. There was really nothing they could do. I found out later that after that 2 year notification, that they quietly notified all of their Roger Rabbit suppliers uh, to stop making Roger Rabbit merchandise because they no longer own that character.
Mhm.
And then the actual date came and went, and the world didn't end, and I had the rights back.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Um, so Disney wrote me a letter saying, you now have the rights back. Um, and I am now able to do my own Roger Rabbit projects based on my books, my ideas, my, whatever. A couple of restrictions, American law, so American rights. I'm limited to the United States, but
Okay.
the United States is a big place, and
Yes, it is.
Netflix can distribute exclusively in the United States. So can Amazon. So can HBO.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm not worried about that. And we're going full speed ahead to produce new projects, and I think the fans are going to love it.
What about the image itself of Roger Rabbit? So, because, you look at your, book, for example, different than the character that they made in the movie. So, are you able to use that cartoon version that they used in the movies too?
An interesting question. Now there's been a number of iterations of Roger Rabbit on my books and my projects. The first book, the Doubleday, the St. Martin's hardcover that kicked it all off. The rabbit on the cover of that was a real stuffed rabbit from a company called Kamar, which I commissioned them to make
Mhm.
because I thought it was kind of cool. So that's a real stuffed rabbit. And then Doubleday did a book club edition,
Mhm.
um, and they changed the cover. I am on the cover of the original as Eddie Valiant. Um,
Oh,
and
that's
they,
cool.
yeah, and then Doubleday came out and they changed the cover to an all artwork cover. They came up with what they conceived the rabbit to look like, which is kind of goofy. And I don't particularly like it, but it's what they came up with. And they also changed um, the image of Eddie Valiant from me to some guy that looked more like Robert Stack in The Untouchables. He's much more handsome and ruggedly handsome. The interesting thing is that on the book jacket of the original, it says the detective on the cover is portrayed by Mr. Wolf,
Mhm.
which I was. Well, Doubleday didn't change that on the book club edition. So it says the detective on the cover is portrayed by Mr. Wolf. And so everybody thinks I look like Robert Stack, like this ruggedly handsome guy. And when I autograph one of those, I always draw a beard on the guy because he doesn't have a beard.
That's great.
Um, then Ballantyne did a version, also artwork, um, with a detective who was wearing a trench coat and just a generic detective, and also a cartoon rabbit, which they designed and looks different again. Um, on my second Roger Rabbit novel, Who Plugged Roger Rabbit, Disney gave me the rights to use Roger and Jessica on the cover.
Oh,
So
okay.
Roger and Jessica are on the cover of the book. And, so fine. For the third Roger Rabbit novel, Who Whacked Roger Rabbit, well, we were getting close to the turnover of rights, and they would not let me use Roger on the cover. So Roger is on the cover, but he has plummeted to the ground and is smacked into the ground, and he's a hole in the ground in the shape of Roger Rabbit. So, he is kind of still there.
Right.
Uh, the likenesses of the characters, Roger, Jessica, Baby Herman, which are my three characters. I don't own Benny the Cab, the Weasels, Judge Doom. Those are all Disney characters. But my characters, Eddie Valiant, Roger Rabbit, Jessica Rabbit, Baby Herman. The three animated characters, Disney and Spielberg own the rights to those, to what
Mhm.
they look like. So I am going to have to redesign those characters. And I don't think the fans will have a problem with that as long as the material is good and supports it and is funny and has the same heart that the original had. I look at Marvel characters which have been redesigned 100 times. DC characters, Superman doesn't look at all like what he looked like in the 1930s. Animated characters don't look at all like what they did when they first started out. Mickey Mouse doesn't look like what he did in 1935. Bugs Bunny doesn't look like what he did in 1940. So I don't think the fans will have a problem with it. Right now, we're working with a number of really top-notch character designers who have done character design for incredible movies, and they are all working to come up with a concept for the three characters.
That's
Roger, Jessica, and actually Baby Herman. They have to come up with two concepts because he is the baby, but he's also a 35-year-old cigar smoking guy from New Jersey. So yes, that has to be done. Um, the end goal is to have a character that looks enough like Roger Rabbit so that a fan will look at it and say, "Oh yeah, it's Roger Rabbit. Oh yeah, it's
right.
Jessica Rabbit," but not so much like Roger Rabbit or Jessica that Disney will say, "Oh, we're going to sue you for
Right.
copyright infringement." That's a fine line, but we'll cross it. And again, um, I have nothing to go on this but my gut feel for what looks good and what's going to work. But I can't rely on that, so I will probably have three teams of lawyers. Yeah,
Double and triple check.
yeah.
Oh, that's
I,
amazing.
probably right now, even as we speak, there are lawyers in conference rooms in three locations across the United States discussing some element of Roger Rabbit.
What about the design? And because in the time when the characters were made for the movie, the animation style was different using cells and the style
Yeah.
of animation. Now everything is digital through a computer.
Mhm.
Just recently, you had the Simpsons release on Fortnite, and they kept the cell shading to try to make it look like the old cartoon style. Are you going to try to keep the feel of the old cartoon style, or are you gonna try through the design process to make it more look digital?
Um, I hate digital. I hate CGI. I hate digital. I think it's cold.
Mm,
I think it's kind of inhuman. What drew me to write Roger Rabbit in the first place was my love for old Warner Brothers, Tex Avery, Disney uh, animated cartoons, and that's the look I want to go for.
mhm,
I think you can use computer technology to achieve that. I've seen it. I mean, people have been sending me samples of things that they have done
mhm.
that are new cartoons done in an old style, and it's doable. In fact, it is probably far less expensive than the way we did it in the first place,
Hmm,
which required filming live action, overlaying cells on the live action, and then sending it to ILM. The Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic, sending it to ILM to do the shadows and shading. So it was basically a three-stage process. And I think with computers, I think you can um, probably tighten up that process. But again, I'm not a techie guy, and
Mhm.
gonna have to leave that to my teams of techie guys who are probably even right now trying to figure out how best to do it. But the look I want, the look I won't be happy unless I get is an old style look. The We've got two screenwriters working on the script for the first movie, and they are. I'm sorry I can't tell you names, but I'm contractually obligated. I can't release it until we actually sign them and sign contracts. But they are incredibly top notch, award winning screenwriters, and we've been in conversation about um, what era should we go for, because the original was set in the 40s. All the novels are set in a kind of a never never timeland.
Mhm.
They don't they don't uh, they don't refer to the 40s, 50s, 60s. They just exist.
Mhm.
And I've always said that in Toontown, time is a free flowing river. It goes from uh, the 30s to the 60s to the 40s to the 50s and back again. And I don't think anybody really cares. It's part of the charm of Toontown. So we've been having a lot of discussions about what era we should set the new projects in, and we've narrowed it down to the 50s, 60s, or 70s. Yeah, so we've got 30 years to play with there.
Can I show you my cell of Roger Rabbit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I think, because I wanna know it if you collect the art too, and I think you'll know what scene this is from as I bought this, and it's cool because I think it was part of the trailer of it as well. So let me see if I can get this without.
Whoa. Yeah, I think it is part of the trailer, and I will give you a little history on that cell and the animation that went into that cell.
Yeah.
Um, Dick Williams was the lead animator for
Mhm.
Roger Rabbit, and one of the problems we had finding a lead animator was we wanted someone who was really top notch in his field. So we all wanted Chuck Jones, and we talked to Chuck, and Chuck wanted to do it. But after we talked to him, we realized that he was, I think, in his late 70s, early 80s at the
Mm.
time, and the feeling was that the workload from this movie might be so intense that it would kill him.
Oh, boy.
We said, "Oh yeah, sorry, Chuck, we can't use you." And it's the only time in Hollywood that I've ever seen anybody have the least bit of sympathy for their employees. It's usually they chain them to the desk and work them to death, but they really like Chuck, and I like Chuck, and they just didn't want him to uh, this to be his final project. So we talked to Ralph Bakshi because he had done Fritz the Cat, animated R-rated movie. Steven thought he was a goon. Um, and I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Ralph Bakshi had gotten his hands on Jessica. But we finally wound up with Dick Williams, who was a Canadian expatriate living in England, in London, and he won the Academy Award for the Pink Panther.
Mhm.
He had done a series of beer commercials for a beer. I can't remember the name of the beer. You can find them on YouTube. And there's a cat who wants a beer, and the cat will risk anything to get a beer, and he does all these really crazy, stupid, risky, dangerous things to get
Mhm.
the beer, and he always winds up dying, but he gets the beer. Okay, and there's 9 lives. He's got 9 lives, so he eventually gets 8 beers with 1 life left. Um, if you look at those cartoons, you will see that a lot of the kind of cartoon shtick that's in them is also in Roger Rabbit. Dick
Mhm.
borrowed a lot of shtick. So Dick wanted to open the movie with a cartoon like they used to do in the 30s and 40s, and
Had the title card and everything. It was great.
and everything. This caused a lot of problems because Writers Guild, Directors Guild requires that the names of the key players be the first thing you see on the screen. And so we had to get waivers from all the key people, including me, that all of the credits would go at the end instead of the beginning. So Dick wanted this commercial, this cartoon to be the first thing you saw, and he wanted this commercial to be a blowaway, something that was so amazing that, and the people he wanted to impress with this wasn't the audience. He wanted to impress other animators.
Right.
He wanted other animators to look at this cartoon and have their jaws drop.
Right.
So Dick animated every cell of that cartoon personally.
Wow.
So that cell that you've got right there was hand drawn by Dick Williams.
That's amazing.
And he did things purposefully to make it harder for himself. If you look at that kitchen floor, the kitchen floor is black and white tile.
Right. And that's a separate cell it's on. So one's Roger and one's a separate cell for the floor.
Yeah. So the cell is, but the floor is black and white. Mm-hmm. Now that floor doesn't have to be black and white. The floor could be all black, could be all white. But by making it black and white, every time the perspective changes on the character, this perspective also changes on every single tile.
Right.
So background tiles all have to be redrawn every single time.
Yeah, well, I guess that's why I have a copy of one.
Yeah.
So
if that had been a white floor, you wouldn't have to do that. And probably what you've got there is an original Roger Rabbit that was laid on a photostat of the background. I don't know, but anyway.
Right. The actual kitchen parts is a recreation. My friend Tim Andrews put that together, who, by the way, also told me exactly what you said. He said, as an animator, which he is, he said, that's the dream sequence. That is the top of the top. That's the stuff you show in animation school. Like that's what you study and learn from, is that sequence.
Animators who saw that literally could not believe what they were seeing. The other interesting bit of animation in the movie, the scene where Roger, Eddie, and Dolores are in the storeroom at the terminal bar. Mm-hmm. And Roger stands up on the desk and bumps the lamp. And the lamp starts swinging back and forth. And it's casting shadows. And the shadows go over Eddie, over Roger, over Dolores, and then over Eddie, over Roger, back and forth. And the animation on that was incredibly hard because you had to animate the shadows, and just an amazing job of animation. It's so hard that now when an animator does an especially difficult piece of animation and gets it right, they call that bumping the lamp.
That's right. Is that something named after? Well, there was one old school animator, and if I remember correctly, it was his last film he ever worked on was Art Babbitt.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet him?
I met most of them. There were so many, and they were working so many different places. There were tons of them working in London. There were some working in Disney World down in Florida. There were some working at the studio out in California.
Yeah, I think he was in London. I think he was helping teach future animators out in London, if I remember correctly.
Probably. I met him. I did meet him. I met, a lot of the old guys. The guys that I had more contact with were the younger guys who were on the front line, like Jacques Muller, who did the scene of Roger and Jessica hanging. He did the scene of Judge Doom holding Roger by the neck and getting ready to dip him in the dip. Tom Cito, who I still communicate with regularly, who did a number of things. And, basically, I'm a writer, right? And The movie making business to me is very boring. You set up a shot and you 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 shoot the shot, and then you shoot the shot again, then you shoot the shot again, then you shoot the shot again. You shoot it 50 more times, and then you break and you set up another shot and you do the same thing over again. It's just not, it's not my temperament. And animation is like to me is like watching paint dry. I cannot
I mean,
cannot
kind of is.
drawing and looking in the mirror and making funny faces. I admire the craft and I admire the talent, but I can't do it. Uh, so I would go to the set just because it was kind of fun occasionally, and I would go to the studio and the animation department because it was fun occasionally, and I would generally take vacations and go there for a week or two. Um, but it didn't hang out there all the time um, because after the script was set, after it was in motion, there really wasn't a whole lot I could contribute. Um, the people ask me, well, the movie story is different from the book story. Well, yeah, because the movie's a movie and the book's a book.
Mhm.
And I was involved in transitioning the story from a book story to a movie story. And there were times when I would be sitting in a room with 35 of the most creative people that I've ever met in my life, and they're all throwing out ideas on how to make my book story funnier. And I'm thinking to myself, where were you guys when I was writing this book? At the kitchen table at 4 in the morning. If you'd have been with me then, I would have had a Pulitzer Prize. Um, so I still stay in touch with like Rob Minkoff, who got his start animating on Roger Rabbit. Later went on to do The Lion King, and a bunch of other stuff. And Andreas Deja, I still stay in touch with him. A lot of the older guys have passed on, and it's a shame because the traditional 2D style of animation.
Mhm.
I think computers have kind of outmoded that, and I don't know if you'll ever see those old school guys again. Like I don't know, it's a shame.
Your shirt says Ink and Paint Club, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
Great name. Um, the person that brought us together was Bill Heater. How did you meet Bill?
he's a collector of graduation animation cells,
He's got a lot of cool
and
stuff.
yeah, and I don't remember how I met him. You know, I I find myself lately. I know I have met so many people in my life, um, and I have bad eyesight. I don't see well, uh, so a lot of people that I see are just kind of blurs.
Mm.
And people will come up to me and say, "Hey, how you doing? I met you, da 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 da," and I have no idea. I don't actually remember how or when I met specific people, but I do know that I met Bill. He collects Roger Rabbit cells, and uh, I went to a display of his Roger Rabbit cells, and I saw
Mhm.
all of his Roger Rabbit cells. Oh my God, this guy's amazing!
It is.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I then helped him uh, get his cells on display. I can't remember where. It might have been the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston,
Mhm.
someplace. And he's very generous. All he requires is that the museum provide transportation and insurance,
Yeah.
and he's very generous about loaning them out. And he's just a really great guy. He's a Green Bay Packers fan. I
He's
am.
from Green Bay or from, what was it it was near Milwaukee, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but, yeah, he's done displays up there, and I've seen interviews that he's done with the public broadcasting because he's had also art. But how important is that really to share that art form? Because so much of it is looked at as a lost art form with everything digital. How important is it to like make sure people know this art form not only like is the bedrock for everything we look at today when it comes to animation, but it's
Yeah,
still a very beautiful thing that we shouldn't forget.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing because it took Disney a long, long, long time to realize that what they were creating were not just movies, but actually physical art.
Mhm.
Um, I I've heard so many stories about people who used to hang out behind the Disney studios at night, and they would bring out cells and throw cells into the trash can. They would they what they would more normally do was wash them with acetone, benzene, and
Yeah.
kerosene. The dip. They would wash them with the dip and wash the cells off and reuse them. So they were destroying their art. I mean, it would kind of be like Picasso painting a painting and saying, "Oh, well, yeah, that one's done," and then whitewashing it and painting over it. Um, I I was I was once at Disney, and they gave me an office whenever I went there, and I was in my office. And I went past the office next door. The door was open, and it was filled with boxes. There were boxes as high as I could look, and
Hmm.
I opened one of them. It contained all the cells from Uncle Scrooge's Christmas Carol.
Oh,
And and I, I'm thinking, what are they going to do with these? Well, I don't know. I never found out. And I didn't take any. Um, but I think it was only when Roger Rabbit was done and Disney started to realize that what they had produced was not just a movie, but art.
yeah.
And they had a sale of cells at Sotheby's. And this was really the first time that a studio had done this. They coordinated a sale of the cells from a movie, and they made a ton of money on it. But
Mhm.
it also helped to elevate animation cells as an art form, which I think that most people now believe they are. Yeah, I think you have to educate people on why what a cell is,
Mhm.
what its relationship is to the movie, and how many of them you have to do. 24 frames a second film goes through a camera, so you have to do 24 cells to match up with that live action. That's a lot of drawing, and each one of those cells has to differ just a hair from the before it, so that you get the illusion of motion. And I think people have to be um, schooled on that. And I'm still waiting for somebody to um, to start promoting the names of the animators who did those cells,
Mhm.
in addition to the cells.
Okay.
I mean, you've got a cell there uh, done by Dick Williams. He did that cell. Well, if I hadn't told you, you wouldn't have known. And I've got one hanging on my wall with Roger and Jessica hanging from the rope that was done by Jacques Muller.
Mhm.
And nowhere does it say, "Hey, this was done by Jacques Muller." You might say, "Well, they all look alike. Roger all look alike. Jessica all look alike." If you talk to an animator and show him a cell
Mhm.
from Roger Rabbit, he can tell you who drew that cell because they all have their own little idiosyncrasies.
Mhm.
All Rogers are a little different depending on who drew them. All Jessicas, all Baby Hermans. Um, and those guys haven't got the credit that I think they justly deserve.
Yeah. When you were bringing this up, and I never made the connection that you just brought up when it came to the way that they would wipe the cells clean in the Roger Rabbit movie with the dip, literally dipping, like they did the old cells to get rid of what was on there so they can reuse it, is the same
Mhm.
in the movie where they dip the cartoon characters to get rid of them. That's the
Yeah.
same thing. I've never connected the 2. That is genius.
Well, the genius part of that was, uh, the animator was sitting around and we were trying to figure out a really cruel way to get rid of tunes. And um, I don't remember who came up with the fact that we were talking about the old way when they used to clean off cells by dipping them in acetate, benzene, and kerosene, and they said, "Wow, that'd be kind of cool." Interesting sidelight that the thing that most traumatizes the young people who saw that movie, there are two things. One of them is Judge Doom when his eyes go,
Oh,
whack.
the
The
bulldozer.
other thing is the death of the Red Shoe.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
traumatized young children and some older children too. And there is a fan group called Justice for the Red Shoe,
I believe it.
and they have lobbied me forever to bring back the Red Shoe, and I've promised them that in the sequel movie that I will bring back the Red Shoe.
Oh, that's great. What does that mean about the age you're gonna try to reach with your new projects? Are you gonna try to do something that's all ages, or are you gonna have some of those elements in it like the movie did that are traumatizing? So what are you gonna try to hit when it comes to the age level for these?
I think kids are I think kids are sophisticated enough nowadays. They can handle seeing a shoe get dipped or seeing a detective who's a drunk. I, I think kids could handle that back in the 1980s when the movie came out. I am not going to dumb this movie down. I'm not going to make a childish movie.
Mm.
It's going to be a noirish, um, hard boiled movie that will appeal to all ages. We do have projects that we're targeting out for children. We're going to do a children's TV show.
Hmm.
Mm, Probably no drinking in that, although I wouldn't count it out. Um, the letters of complaint I got on the movie were the drinking.
Interesting.
Why does he have to always drink? I mean, he's a drunkard. Why is he drunk? Well, that's what private eyes do.
Yeah.
And let's get back to the Red Shoe for just a second.
Mhm.
Everybody says, "Oh, poor Red Shoe, didn't do anything." If you watch the movie, the Red Shoe kicks the policeman in the crotch.
Mhm.
So the Red Shoe is not entirely blameless. I think the punishment was a little severe for the misdemeanor, but he was not exactly blameless in that movie.
Yeah, I've seen some of those theories there about it, pointing that out. There's always little things you don't pick up on until someone points it out, but it's very intentional. Sometimes those details that are put in to justify certain things, and it may take years for you to actually notice it. I think it's fantastic that you're going to be. Yeah, let me say this, and I'm going to say this in a frank way because
Oh,
I've heard Bob Dylan talk about what it was like when he wrote songs when he was younger, and then he gets older and he's like, the magic goes. The older you get, the magic starts to go. How is your creative abilities today? Do you feel like you're the same writer you were then, or do you feel like you're a different writer and we can anticipate different things because of it?
I think a little of both. I think I've gotten better. Um, I'm currently working on my fifth Roger Rabbit novel,
Mhm.
a Toontown novel, actually. The first one was Who Censored, Who Plugged Roger Rabbit, Who Whacked Roger Rabbit. Then I did a Jessica Rabbit Origins novel, Jessica Rabbit Serious Business, serious spelled with an X. And now I'm doing the uh, fifth Toontown novel. And I asked myself that question.
Mhm.
Am I as good now as I was back in 1978 when I wrote the first one?
Mhm.
And I think in a lot of ways I'm better. I have a better grasp of the characters. Um, I have a more finely honed sense of humor.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm able to craft scenes and dialogue that are much funnier than what I was doing back in the 70s, 78. The only downside that I've been able to see is that I'm not as fast as I used to be. It takes me a lot longer. Um, I wrote Who Censored Roger Rabbit in about a year. and every book seems to take me 6 months longer,
Hmm.
6 months longer, and I've been working on the new one for about 2 years, and I'm still maybe 4 to 5 months shy of finishing it. But uh, the way I write, uh, I will do a rough draft, and the rough draft is crap. I mean, it's an absolute total crap. And you go through it, and you find maybe 6 pages that are okay.
Mhm.
So you keep those 6 pages, and you throw away everything else, and you write another one. And you know that's crap. But now you got 12 pages that are maybe okay, so you keep those 12, and you go through it and you go through it. I once calculated that I rewrite every page 100 times,
Wow.
sometimes 100 times, and I know I'm finished with it, and I go back and read it, and I say, "Wow, I can't have written this because it's too good. This is I could not have written this. This is too good." And I've gone back to the start of my new one 2 dozen times. Started from the beginning and gone through just to make sure everything's consistent. And it's reaching that level now. I read it and it just cracks me up. And I wrote it and it still cracks me up. I still think it's funny. So I think a little of both. I think I'm the same as I've always been, but different.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. Um, when I think about the memories that I had as a kid and the experiences that I had, certain movies that stand above the rest. I grew up in the '80s, so Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Roger Rabbit, and
Mhm.
the one thing that I came to appreciate with Roger Rabbit after the fact is that animation as an art form was kind of on its way out, like, it was not in a good state, and that kind of revitalized a lot of people to say this is still a very viable art form, and what I worry about when I hear about projects like this is that it's not going to it's like, he here's where I sit. I have all of these fond memories as a kid, and all of this means so much to me. So you're like, there's a lot of pressure riding on a new one because you're like, "Please, I wanna feel like that again, and if I don't feel like that, it's gonna feel like a letdown." So do you feel so
So,
much
so,
pressure now that you have the rights back?
yeah, no, I feel the pressure constantly.
Yeah.
I can't produce crap. I'm going to put a sign up over my desk: no crap. It has to be as good or better than the original.
Mm,
Um, you know, and I think a lot of it depends on the story.
mhm.
I think the reason why Roger succeeded where a lot of other live action animation movies, Cool World, Space Jam,
Yeah.
whatever. I think the reason that Roger Rabbit succeeded where they failed is because of the story and the relationship between the main characters. I mean, there's a love-hate relationship between Eddie and Roger, and Jessica has a relationship with Roger that is a real, kind of quote human relationship.
Mm,
You could replace Roger with uh, some actor from the '50s, John Garfield or Cary Grant or somebody, and the relationship would have been the same. Yeah, he was a rabbit, but she loved him because he made her laugh, and that's a real human relationship. Um, I think we have to have that in any new movie. People have been asking me, "Hey, what about Rescue Rangers?" Roger was in Rescue Rangers, and Rescue Rangers was supposed to be the spiritual sequel to Roger Rabbit. Rescue Rangers was a video game.
mm,
There was no human emotion or even chipmunk emotion
mhm.
in in Rescue Rangers. It was all uh, action, speed, and motion, hoping that some of that would translate into laughs. I don't think it did, and I don't think the movie succeeded. Um, the only good part of it was that you got to get a glimpse of some characters you hadn't seen for a while, but they didn't really do anything. I mean, all Roger did was kind of a little tap dance and a stupid song. Um, if you were really going to do something, Roger should have had a relationship with Chip and Dale. Chip and Dale should have had a relationship with each other, which they
Mhm.
didn't. And I am sick to death of uh, people who think that a great concept is to do some kind of an animated movie where CGI characters interact with real characters because, hey, this is the future and this is the past. Um, it's bleak, and it really is a very uncreative way to go about doing an animated movie.
Yeah. I guess now that you have the characters back, so there's probably a lot of other things you have to take into consideration, like merchandising and things like that. So, how many aspects to starting over are there that I'm not thinking of? Because you're talking about screenwriters and you're talking about getting the rights. I'm sure there's merchandising. I'm sure there's other aspects to it. It seems like this probably takes up 20 hours a day working something like this together.
So, I mean, you can Google me. You know how old I am. I'm not getting any younger. I kind of half expected to be retired by now. One day last week, I had a meeting. This is in the morning.
Mhm,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, and 10.
Oh man.
All on Zoom, all discussing some element of new projects. And there are some things that I've never said a bad thing about Disney. I never will. I mean, Disney treated me right. Um, yeah, they didn't make a second movie, but that wasn't entirely Disney's fault. I mean, there were other um, there were other elements at work there
Mhm.
that Disney couldn't control. Um, but Disney basically treated me right, and um, they did things that I am now having to do that I realize are kind of tough things, like merchandise. Yeah, Disney had a machine set up to make T-shirts, badges, caps, rugs, statues, you name it.
Everything.
And now I'm having to do that. I'm having to talk to people who are, making T-shirts. And hey, what kind of a weave do you want here? And, where are we going to get the designs? And um, some of it's exciting. Like they're, I'm going to do certain things that Disney would never do, like pinball machines.
Hmm.
There's going to be a Roger and Jessica Rabbit Toontown pinball machine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and Disney would never do that. I suggested it to them, but they would never do that. And really, the only reason I'm doing this is because I want one for my office. But
Of course, that would be great.
uh,
Oh,
yeah, so I'm dealing with a lot of that. I'm dealing with a lot of um, the writing, the writing. I'm getting involved in the selection of actresses who should play Jessica in the live action Jessica Rabbit movie, which I mean, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to talk to Margot Robbie. I mean, not that not that she's on the list, but um,
I know, generally speaking, that's gotta be an
in
amusing
general
process.
terms, somebody's got to speak to Margot Robbie. So, I'm also deluged with um, calls from people who want to play characters in the movie. I'm getting calls from really big deal actors who want to be Eddie Valiant. Um, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'm putting together production teams who
Mhm.
will deal with that for me. I'm a writer. I like sitting in my office and looking out the window, doing my 10,000 words a day. That's what I like doing. All of this, I'm not cut out to be a movie mogul. But in order to get this off the ground, you got to do what you got to do.
I like that you mentioned that 10,000 words a day. There was a person that I worked with, and he would write, and if he heard that someone else was writing, he would always ask them, "What's your word count up to?" That was his thing, and he said he would tell very quickly if the person was serious about writing or not if they knew the number.
Well, okay, I'll tell you, I made that number up. I once talked to Dean Koontz. We shared an agent, and I talked to Dean Koontz and also Stephen King. Stephen King lives just down the street from me
Mhm.
for a while here in Boston. And I used to go out with him for walks when he'd walk his dog in the morning. And I would talk to Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and I was ask them, hey, how many words a day do you write? Because you seem to, be just churning them out right and left. And Dean Koontz said, oh, I write 10,000 words a day. And Stephen King says, oh, I write 15,000 words a day. And some days I'm really over the moon if I can find the right word. I mean, I write one word a day, but it's the right word. And so, that's not a good judge. I mean, a lot of you get to the creative process, and a lot of people do their creativity and they write their books in their head.
Mhm.
And Stephen King and Dean Koontz are two of those people. They write them in their head, and by the time they get to the writing down physically part, the book is done. Me, I have to see it, I have to read it, I have to hear it, I have to go into Toontown. I have to leave my desk and go into Toontown and look around and see what's going on there today and write what I see. So I don't have a huge word count. One word a day is not my norm, but there have been those days.
You just wait. It's like those movies where you see the painter and all they do is they're thinking and they put one dot down and that's all they needed. Just whatever that one dot was.
Yeah, that's it.
So when you're consuming movies or television, what do you enjoy to watch? Are there any things that you've seen that have inspired you in your own creative process?
Well, when I was growing up, I give this to I give this to my mother. My mother, uh, I grew up in a very small farm town in Illinois. My mom she didn't run the school. She worked in the school cafeteria, and my dad ran the pool.
Mhm.
Neither one of them had much of an education. They had to drop out of school early on because of the depression. My dad made it to the third grade. My mother made it to the eighth grade. Um, and my mother uh, told me, she said, Gary, what you have to do to get out of this town, if you don't want to wind up staying here the rest of your life, running your dad's pool hall, is to read, 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 and that will get you out of this town. So I took her advice and I started reading. And I read everything I get my hands on. Well, I was a kid. So what did I read? I read comic books, and I grew up reading comic books. Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, uh, the horrible, horrible horror stuff and war stuff that Congress saw fit to ban in the 50s because it was rotting the minds of children. I love that stuff. And I also had a movie theater in town, and they ran a movie on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then another movie on Friday, Saturday, then another movie on Sunday, Monday, and I would go see them all because it was only 10 cents. It was 10 cents to go to the movies,
Mhm.
and I would see them all. And I love the cartoons. Every movie started out with a cartoon. I love those. Um, and I saw certain movies that just stuck with me that I never forgot. Western called Shane. Um, Never forgot it. The prototypical Western of the loner who comes into town and he's like the detectives that I write about today. He has his own moral code. Um, so those are the things that influence me. The other thing that influenced me, my dad read something called True Detective magazines,
Hmm.
true crime magazines, and they don't exist anymore. I hope not. They might, but I hope not. And these true crime magazines featured articles about true crimes, always murders, and they were illustrated with actual scenes from pictures from the crime scene. If you saw Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition,
Hmm.
Jude Law played a photographer that was based on a real photographer called Weegan, who would go to crime scenes. You get there before the police and then rearrange the corpses so that they were more photogenic. And I read that stuff, and I thankfully I graduated to a better caliber of crime fiction. Philip Marlowe and Raymond Chandler. Um, and I started to watch movies that were based on these books, noir movies. So that had a big influence on me, and I think they still do. I mean, I still really enjoy a good crime movie. Um, I still love watching a good cartoon.
That's great. Yeah, and it's fun too. As my son gets older, I get to watch things with him that I enjoyed as a kid, and you know, as he gets older, there's certain new things I can introduce to him, and kind of like, okay, this is what I used to watch, and it's funny because he'll say, "Now I understand why you're so weird."
Well, it's interesting because um, I saw my fan base change when the Roger Rabbit movie came out. My fan base were young people to old people. I mean, across all ages.
Mhm.
And then as the years went by, the younger people kind of dropped off because they couldn't see the movie, and the older people remembered it, but not fondly. And then it came out on cassette.
Mhm.
And when it came out on cassette, the people who seen it originally bought it, and by now a lot of them were married and had kids, and so they started using it as a babysitter. So my fan base got younger again, and I got kids again. And then it came out on Laserdisc, it came out on DVD, and now it's on Disney Plus. So my fan base keeps getting younger because parents introduce the movie to their children, and kids love it, and the adults watch it over and over again. Just in the past 2 years, I've gone to, I think, 3 or 4 screenings at theaters where they've shown it in the original aspect on the big screen. And I'm amazed because, I mean, it's a 35-year-old movie, 40-year-old movie, still holds up,
Yeah.
still looks good, story's still good. It's not dated at all.
No, the fan base is there,
Yeah.
which I think is gonna be really nice when you whatever the news is. I always see the headlines because it instantly goes into my feed. But the algorithms know this is what I want to see more of whenever there's news there. I'm amazed that I get a chance to talk to you here, and at
Well,
this.
I'm amazed at this point in my life that anybody wants to talk to me, and that I am able to hold a fairly rational and intelligent conversation. So,
It's a
we're
it's a
we're
Sunday night, and one thing I said before one thing that, right before I clicked start recording, you said, "Edit this." I don't think there is any edit point needed. You are such a
yeah.
fascinating person to talk to. Nothing here needs to be edited. This is just all of it is just so
I
great.
will, for the fans out there who are listening, what I told you was, when you edit this to make me look a lot more intelligent than I actually am. You have to realize that I am a writer and I do live for a living, so probably everything that I told you, I made up on the spot. So, hey, make sure you get your fact checker to take a look.
So we should have, like, the old VH1 pop-up video fact check going on the screen, I think,
This
with a
is a lie.
thumbnail.
This
Yeah.
is a lie.
Yep, those type of animations. Well, I have to say, this was just such an awesome thing, and I can't wait to learn more and see more in the trades when information comes out. And I know it sounds like it's still pretty early, but the fact that you're doing all these meetings, it shows me that the progress is being made, and then one day be able to see a something like, back up on the screen. I'll say, "Oh yeah." I'll tell my son, "I talked to Gary. You're gonna have to watch the video." I'll be so proud. I'll be bragging to him. I know him. It'll be so great. Well, congratulations on all your success. I'm glad that you were able to get it all back and that you're gonna be able to treat it the right way, and I think
Can
that's
I,
what a lot of people want.
can I give a plug for my website?
Yes.
Go to www.garywolf.com
Mm.
and you will see all of my books. My books are now also available as audiobooks, which
Hmm.
saves me a lot of time because whenever somebody wanted an audio book, they would call me up and I would read it to them on the phone. So this actually saves me a whole bunch of time. Uh,
Well, I did something really stupid here at the end of the interview. I had the tab open where we're recording, and while he was talking, I was going to flip over to his website, which has his work on there, GaryWolf.com. And I accidentally closed the tab, which closed the recording. So I want to make sure you know you can find his novels and his work and updates to his projects online, GaryWolf.com. You can check it out on there. I want to thank him for doing this interview. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. And I hope to do more of these real soon. Thank you.